Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reasonably Fine Art Talk. This is your friend Charlie Hunter in Bellows Falls, Vermont. We have a very, very special Reasonably Fine Art Talk for you today. Our guest is Sarah Freeman down in Brattleboro, Vermont. She is the exhibition director and education outreach director.
Yeah, almost. You're giving me a bit of a promotion there, so yeah, I should just let it lie. But I'm the exhibitions manager and the coordinator of education programs, so kind of a mouthful.
At the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center in Brattleboro, Vermont. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a small but mighty museum. Betty Sue is down in Austin, Texas, where she is overseeing our technical things. Betty Sue, could you place on the screen the picture of the fine Brattleboro Museum and Art Center, just so people get a sense of it? This is a 1915 railroad station, ladies and gentlemen. And Sarah is normally found in there, but during the pandemic, she is working remotely from home. And before we get going, now we'll go back to the big picture of the two of us for a minute, if we could. You have had a really interesting journey. You've been at the Brattleboro Museum since 2015, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Before that, you were at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian in New York City. Mm-hmm. You were at the Doge Picture Gallery in London. Mm-hmm. Before that, you were in the Lighthouse Center for Architecture Design in the city in Glasgow, Scotland.
Yeah.
So, not a normal career path there. Give us the skinny. What's
Sure. So I actually grew up in Newfane, Vermont, not too far from here, about like 12 miles to be exact. And so Brattleboro was the big city for me. And Brattleboro Museum and Art Center was the first museum that I ever visited as a child or as a human being. So it has a pretty special place in my heart. And I went to college and I studied art, studio art and art history. And when I graduated from college, I got a job in an art gallery in New York City doing as the registrar. So doing that kind of what I think is the really fun stuff, which is actually working with the art, planning exhibits, putting up exhibits, doing loans and consignments and condition reports, and doing all of the kind of cool behind the scenes, hands-on stuff that you don't always get to hear about, or that you don't necessarily think about when you think about galleries or museums. And so I did that for about 4 years, and I really, really liked it. And I was working in this cool gallery that was partly German and Austrian expressionism and American folk art. So you had this like really dark kind of angsty German and Austrian, woodcuts, like things by Kathy Kollwitz and George Gross and Egon Schiele and all of those folks. And then you had like Grandma Moses and Horace Pippin and, Morris Hirschfield and all these really amazing folk art artists in this all in one gallery, all in one fun package tied up with a bow. And the people who ran this gallery were really, really interested in the kind of story that these different artists told about the time in which they were living. So I learned a ton when I was working there, and I had a really great time. And then I decided that I wanted to focus on arts education. So I started working in a nonprofit in New York City that would send teaching artists into classrooms and, help kind of spread the good news about arts education throughout the city. And that was a really cool job. But I wasn't quite convinced that was what I really wanted. So I actually at that time met my husband, who's from the UK, and moved to the UK to be with him. And because of my previous experience in arts education, I was able to volunteer at a museum before I could work legally, before I had my visa and everything. We were living in Glasgow in Scotland. And I was working at this place called the Lighthouse Center for Architecture and Design, and the city.
In the city.
Don't forget the city. And like helping, mostly it was doing workshops with students, Scottish school students, which was very fun, very interesting, a very steep learning curve for me. And also doing professional development for teachers, helping them to integrate architecture and design into their curriculum in their classrooms. And that was really cool. And I loved that organization, and I loved Glasgow, but I couldn't deal with the weather. It was just really tough. It was a really fantastic place to live, but just like gray about 10 months out of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And that was rough. So my husband and I moved down to London, and I got a job at the Dulwich Picture Gallery, which is England's first purpose-built art museum. So it was built in 1811, and it has a really amazing collection of old master paintings. So Rembrandt, Canaletto, Rubens, Poussin, Gainsborough, all the kind of heavy hitters. And that was a really cool job. I was there as the deputy head of education, and got to really use these kind of, in some ways, for some people, quite unappealing, quite boring brown paintings, to bring bring different people into the gallery and help them make connections with these works of art. It was a really fantastic place to work. But of course, I was there for about 4 years, and my husband and I then decided we wanted to try living back in the States and see how it would be to live in New York City, because I think, my husband is from a fairly smallish town in Wales, and so living in the Big Apple kind of appealed to him. So we moved back, or I moved back to the US, and he moved with me. And I got a job at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum doing public education. So pretty much anything that wasn't specifically school students or teenagers. So families, kids, adults, all sorts of things. And the kind of funny thing was that the museum was actually closed to the public the whole time I was there for refurbishment. So I started about a week after they'd closed completely in 2011, and I left a couple days after they reopened to the public in 2014. So our mission while I was there was to keep the museum, vibrant and vital, and use off-site exhibits that we were doing to provide educational opportunities for lots of different people. And we also opened the Cooper Hewitt Design Center up at the top of Central Park in Harlem, where we did a lot of our programming. So, and that was kind of my main job while I was there, was really leading the programming there and working with a bunch of really cool designers and architects and community groups. And yeah, it was really, really cool. And then, because we can't stay in one place too long, apparently, we decided, both my husband and I decided that New York was really great, but it was getting a little bit exhausting. And my parents live here in Newfane, and so we decided that this would be a cool time to see what it would be like to live in Vermont and be closer to my parents, which was ostensibly one of the reasons we moved to the US from the UK, but we never wound up seeing them because we were always in New York, kind of like, going crazy and not ever able to leave the city. So we moved up to Vermont finally at the end of 2014, and here I am. Yeah.
Was the job waiting for you, or did the job appear once you got here?
It was this really weird kind of twist of fate that when I was looking for work, the person who had been running the exhibitions, doing the exhibition management, which was a part-time job, and the person who was doing the education, which was a part-time job, both left the museum at the same time, one of them to retire and one of them to move to Canada. So the kind of two parts of this job, both of which I had experience and like, a lot of passion and interest in, came together to form one complete full-time job that was kind of like, oh my gosh, is this like designed for me? This is perfect. So it just was this really great happenstance.
Well, that's neat. That's neat.
Yeah.
Picture. As far as I know, you just are there.
Well, yes, lying in wait.
So now, one of the things I thought is that I'm hoping to do with these reasonably fine art talks is to talk with people about. Oh, let's put that up, Betty Sue. We'll take a look at that. Bought a doll in an old store there in the early '70s. Love the town. Been to your museum?
Oh, great.
Yes. Oh, it's Judy. Hi, Judy. Judy ended up buying the painting that was in the North by Northeast.
No way.
One of the Bellows Falls tunnel. Anyway,
cool.
One of the things that I thought was interesting for people is to use this show I've got coming up, this SEMAPHORE show, to kind of educate all of us about the component parts of a museum show. And we've had Danny on, Danny Lichten, director of the museum. And he pointed out at that time, and I'd never really thought about it, that the Brattleboro Museum is not a collection museum. It's always, what do you call it? What kind of museum do you call it?
It's a non-collecting contemporary art museum. So
that means each show that happens,
yep.
You don't say, let's go out in the back and pull out the Gainsboroughs. Let's
right.
Cons out. You need to coordinate. Well, tell us, what are the steps? What are the steps that are in a typical show for you?
Yeah, it's kind of a it's both like a really exciting, great way to work, but also really, really challenging, because when you're a museum like us, we do about between 20 and 25 different exhibits every year. So they change, the whole museum changes over about 3, maybe 4 times a year. And like you said, we don't have a permanent collection, so we don't put exhibits together based on work that we already have. We instead, we go out and look for different curators or different artists to work with. And so we kind of, to answer your question, you sort of start with an idea, right? You start with the idea of the exhibit that you want to put on, whether that's something that's featuring a particular artist or something that's focusing on a particular idea or concept. And then you get together you get the bands together, basically. You figure out who your curator is, who the artists involved are going to be, and what work they're going to show. And then you start getting all of the like nitty-gritty details. Like, okay, so Charlie is going to show around 13 to 14 different paintings, and they're all going to be in this one particular gallery. Do we actually have the physical space to accommodate this? What kind of work is it? What kind of environmental controls do we need to have in place? What kind of lighting are we going to have? What kind of text or interpretation are we going to have for each of these different paintings? Who's going to write about this show? Is the curator, in this case, Eric Aho, who's an artist himself, is he going to write about the show? Or are we going to have Charlie himself contribute an essay or some writing of some kind? And then you have to start thinking about how you're going to physically get the paintings to the museum. So sometimes you, Charlie, have brought your paintings to us yourself, which is amazing. We can't always rely on people to do that. But then, of course, we have people who are lending paintings to the show from all over the country. So then you have to get in touch with them, do loan agreements, figure out what the insurance values of the artwork is and where it's coming from, how long it's going to be at the museum. what kind of shape it's in so that you know it's going to be able to travel okay and, you know, be okay on the other end when it comes out. And then when the work gets to the museum, you condition report it. So you take very detailed notes and pictures of what condition the work is in when it gets to you. And that way, you know that when you're sending it back to the owner, it's, you know, it's in the same state in which you received it, which is really important. Because when it's at the museum is safeguarding the artwork. You know, we're responsible for it. And we care a lot about it. And of course, then there's, you know, the kind of putting up the artwork on the wall. So laying everything out, getting the team in who puts the nails in the wall and actually hangs everything, and then putting up all of the labels so people know what they're looking at. And then, you know, in olden times, throwing a party to celebrate when we're open, which we will be doing again. But, you know, we've had a kind of funky off time. So that's like in a nutshell. That's what happens.
Let's look at some of the pictures that you draw. So this is the big room.
Yes. The main gallery. And this is a picture of actually, this is the Vermont Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, which is something the museum administers for the state of Vermont. The Scholastic Art and Writing Awards is a national program that celebrates creativity in students in grades 7 through 12.
Yeah, I was on the jury of it a couple of years ago. And it is wicked impressive.
It is really incredible. It's you know, you get about 500 submissions from student artists all over the state of Vermont. And you know, we have a panel of judges who look at the work and they judge everything blindly, in that they don't know who the student is, where they go to school, how old they are, that sort of thing. So you're really judging the work on its merit and looking at the technical skill, the originality, and the emergence of a personal voice or vision. Those are the criteria. And then the work that receives awards comes to the museum and gets shown in this huge exhibit that covers, you know, 3 different galleries. It's great. It's a super fast turnaround and a big undertaking. And we sometimes have like around 200 different pieces of art to show. So,
oh Lord.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see the next one. What's going on here?
Yeah. So
wrap the bingo and bubble wrap.
So one of the cool parts about this job is that it's very much no 2 days are the same. There's always something different happening. And there are always different problems that you have to solve, which I think, you know, is kind of similar to the way artists approach their work sometimes. Is like they're trying to solve a problem. It just is a problem that they have created for themselves, usually. Whereas for the people who are, you know, working on the museum team, we have lots of different logistical problems, like, okay, getting a piece of art like this, which is a hyena made of fiberglass stacked on top of some kind of rough 4x4s. And the artist, you know, when we picked it up, it wasn't really wrapped in anything. So then, okay, well, we want to return it in pristine condition, and it has to drive down to a storage facility in a van. So how are we going to protect this little guy? And so sometimes, you know, you get to have a little bit of fun as well as doing your job and doing your duty to the artwork. But yeah, this is a piece of art by an Indian artist named Barti Kher. That was part of this show we did a few years ago that was all about portrayals of animals in contemporary art.
Well, the thing I like about it kind of has that London Go-Go book
Totally.
60s thing going on with
the birds on Carnaby Street.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
The next one, Betty Sue. This is getting ready to hang a show. So is it normally you who goes up on the step ladder?
I try not to go up on the ladder, to be honest. I'm not great with ladders. If I absolutely have to, I'll get up there. But we have an amazing team of preparators and installers, one of whom is Tim Allen, who's our chief preparator, and he does a lot of high up ladder work. He is an excellent problem solver. So we often have artists or curators who have a real vision for what they want their show to look like. And then, we're tasked with executing that in our space, given the constraints we have and, what we have to work with. And the team of people that we work with is really, really awesome at figuring out how to make things work.
All right. And the next slide.
Oh, yes. This is a beautiful.
I like this one because it had the feet visible at the bottom.
Yeah, those were my feet. Unpacking a crate. So, often it's so interesting because, we work with lots of different galleries and lots of different artists and sometimes some other museums. And you just never know. Each place has its different style and its different protocol and, the way they do things. And sometimes you get things that are like, I stuck this in a paper bag and I'm throwing it in the back of my truck and bringing it to you. And then sometimes you get like this gallery that gave us a crate that had been custom made to hold these particular works of art. And it's just, everybody does what they can, but sometimes you just get it. This is a joy to behold for me because I know that everything is going to be safe and sound in there.
I know it must be terrifying because one of the things that is very funny amongst artists that we joke about is that we do just throw paintings.
Yeah, totally.
And then the conservators come out with white gloves. And
yeah, it's never the artists who do this.
No,
never. I think I can say that pretty much across the board. The artists are the ones who are like, yeah, just fold it in half. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Let's have the next one. Next slide, please.
Ah, yes.
I think that you may have a great team, but the tall guy is on the tall.
I know.
Tell us what's going on here.
So this is a piece from the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards a couple of years ago. And this show is such an interesting show every year because it's always completely different. And we don't know, the person who's organizing the exhibit, I don't know what we're going to get because I don't necessarily know which art has won an award. And I also don't know which students or which teachers will get it together to bring their artwork to the museum during the particular time that it has to be there. So, sometimes we get a lot of small work, a lot of photographs, a lot of ceramic work, and then sometimes you get a huge drawing of a sort of demonic pig, and you got to make it work. But yes, this latter work is not necessarily ideal. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now we had a question. Jim is asking, how does the lighting change from show to show?
That's a good question.
Are there temperatures of lighting that you'll install, or is it all?
So we've recently, or fairly recently, made the change over to almost entirely LED lights, both for consistency and also the energy efficiency. But we, in this particular gallery, we have track lighting that is dimmable. So, that changes given the exhibit, given the type of work that we're showing. If you're showing work on paper or fabric or something that's a little bit more delicate, you want to have a lower light level. But this room is huge. These ceilings are about 18-foot ceilings, hence that really tall ladder that was in one of those photos before. So we adjust the lighting, we move it around, we angle it differently. We use fewer or more bulbs or fixtures depending on what we've got going on. But that changes absolutely every show we have. We get different lights.
And would you choose that, or does the curator, or is it a mix? Is it sometimes
it's a mix?
Sometimes you.
Yeah, sometimes we have curators like our chief curator, Mara Williams, who's been working with the museum for many years now and knows the facilities like the back of her hand. She has gotten to a point where she and I understand what she likes and how she likes things to be lit. But sometimes if we have new curators or different people that we're working with, we walk through when all the work is up and we talk about how they want the light placed. And in some rooms, it's really simple because it's quite a much smaller space and you can kind of only do so much. But in a room like this, where you have a bunch of different areas that need to be lit and very high ceilings, you can kind of play around with it a lot more.
Interesting. I want to have Mara on one time too. I mean,
oh, she would be great.
She's a fascinating woman and
yeah,
very adventurous in her programming. I mean,
absolutely. She's really done some incredible shows and brought some really fantastic artists to the museum.
So let's have the next slide, Ms. Betty Sue. And this here is Eric Aho's chicken scratch, as he described it. So this is the floor plan of the gallery, this one of the smaller galleries where I'm going to be having my show. And so Eric and I have met several times. He lives in my town. And so he's come over to the studio and we've worn our masks and we've gone through piles of paintings. And then he's kind of talked about his vision. I've gotten him slideshow of all possible relevant paintings, some of which are in private collections and some of which are in my studio. And then he took this floor plan, which you provided, and I guess he's worked out his thoughts about which pictures they'll be and where they go. Is this a typical the back and forth that's been going on between him and me, and occasionally you email us and say, "Are you guys still working on this?"
Yeah.
Is this typical of a pre-show?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what I appreciate about you and Eric is that you're very communicative. So you're good at telling me where you're at in the process. And you also did the amazing work of putting together the checklist and getting all of the contact information for the various lenders who will be lending paintings to the show. That was really, really wonderful. It's not always such a smooth process.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What I did, ladies and gentlemen, was I got a spreadsheet and the paintings that Eric had pretty much said we definitely wanted, and then I contacted the people. Fortunately, I knew who all the owners were. Yeah. I didn't have to I don't know who has that one.
That's right, but I think it's a great painting, and I want it in the show. That's sometimes that happens. Just like, oh, I did a painting a couple years ago. I don't remember what it's called. I think it got sold to someone, maybe in New York. I bet if you talk to this person, but I don't have their phone number. So, it's always this, not always, but it's sometimes this sort of detective work, which I don't mind. But I also am so grateful when artists and curators have a plan that they're working towards. And I know that the way that Eric works is very, he's really considering your work and thinking about what he wants to say in this show. And, the work that you've pulled together is definitely something that the two of you have talked about a lot together, which I appreciate, because it means that you're both on the same page, which is really important.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, but this stage here is this is right where you guys want to be. Everything is so exciting because it's yes, it's when the plan comes together, it's happening. It's great.
The only thing that is still undecided is the 9-foot 4-inch wall. That is on the wall on the immediate right when you walk through the door with the arrow.
Yeah.
We have a 30 by 30 painting, and the thing that's interesting about working with Eric is, I guess we can go back to just the two heads talking. The thing that's interesting working with Eric is he's very experienced, I think, in hanging shows. So, and he's not overhanging this show at all. So we have a 30 by 30 that's going to go on that wall. And then he's like, can you do one more? And I'm willing to, although I'm kind of SEMAPHORE'd out at this point. I don't know. But I'm currently lobbying for, I've done a lot of 12 by 24 plein air pieces.
Yeah.
And so could we do a mass of 4 of those 12 by 24s?
Right.
Piece. I have not heard back from him about that. But if we did that, I've got most of those here. Less shipping for you guys.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's really fun being curated. I'll tell you, I haven't really had that happen. Yeah. You know, because you're seeing someone else's perception, and someone whose work I respect tremendously. Someone else's perspective on one's own work, you know. And I want to have Eric be a guest on this.
Oh, absolutely. So. Yeah, that would be great.
Now, did Eric curate the Rachel Cortese show?
No, Mara curated that. Yeah.
Now, a little background on that, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Aho's wife is the photographer Rachel Cortese, and she's a magnificent photographer. And she's gotten deeply involved in like tintype photography. And she did a show at the museum. Unfortunately, it was during the pandemic. So
yeah, bad timing. But
I didn't get to see it, but it
lives on online.
It's amazing. It's tintypes, and it's all about hair and kind of how the lens, feminine perception, and hair as decorative and sometimes kind of frightening object. Yeah. How was that show to that was
really, I mean, to be very, very sort of selfish, working with local artists like you and like Rachel is so great for the museum, because we get to have so much more just kind of natural contact and back and forth with you all, because you're here, you know, and like, you know, the community, you know, the sort of context that you're working in. So I had seen a bunch of Rachel's work, and Mara, of course, is really familiar with Rachel's work, and which is how she got to talking with Rachel about doing the exhibit. But it's also just like the ease of doing shows with local artists, because you can just drop by the museum and, you know, bring something if you forgot it. It just makes life that much easier. But that was a really interesting show, because the pieces that Rachel did are tintypes that have been, you know, sort of presented for an exhibition. So they're mounted on, I guess it must be aluminum, and they're very, very delicate because of the way that they're made, and they have this kind of old, almost sort of otherworldly, you know, Victorian look to them. They're really, really beautiful. But we were all just like petrified of, you know, looking at them wrong or breathing on them wrong or something, you know, and touching them, God forbid. So that was kind of a scary one to install, but just a beautiful show.
Yeah, now, so this last year must have been a little bit Eleanor Rigby for you guys. Like, Father writing that no one will hear.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it.
The show still went up, right?
Yeah, so actually, we had just finished installing all new exhibits on March 14th when we opened them to the public, but then promptly shut the museum down on March 16th for 3 months. So we had these kind of ghost exhibits that were up, and nobody was able to see them. And that was really heartbreaking, not just for the museum, but of course for all of the different artists who were involved in those shows. And we had these, you know, curators and people who'd worked on these for ages, because you know, the whole planning and everything for an exhibit can take like 2 years. You know, we plan around 2 years to a year in advance. So these were things that had been talked about and in action in the works for a really long time. And then they opened to a grand, kind of bump. But the kind of cool thing, I don't want to say silver lining, because, this has just been such a horrific year for so many people, but we have started doing virtual tours of all of our exhibits. And that's something that I'm sure we would not have done had we not, been closed, but also had so few people, kind of able or willing to come to the museum when we reopened to the public in June. So now we have these really beautiful virtual online tours of each exhibit that live on. So even if you can't make it to the museum, you can see the tour, or, if you did, you can go back and check out pieces that you especially liked. And, sometimes we have audio that we add to them so you can hear the artist or the curator talking about particular pieces. And that's really exciting. I think valuable.
And where online would people go to find this? At Brattleboro Museum?
Sure. Yes. Why? Thanks for asking. Yes, brattleboromuseum.org. And then up at the top banner, you'll have, there's exhibits. And if you go to current exhibits or past exhibits, each different show has its own page. And on the page, you can click a link to take a virtual tour. And they're really beautiful. Thank you, Betty Sue. They're done really well by this firm called Easel, spelled with a Z instead of an S. And it's really cool. So we have, some people at the museum, our gallery and marketing manager, Erin Jenkins, who pulls all of the information that you're sending me about which paintings are in the show, that Eric sends me, that, all of this information about the work that gets loaded into this tour. So as you're cruising through online, you're seeing the artwork as if you were there in the gallery, but you're also able to read the text labels or hear, audio or see video that's also part of the show. It's really fantastic.
Neat. Now, Barb is curious if galleries are willing to share who you sell your paintings to. It's okay for who, I don't understand. Who sells the paintings? If the gallery sells the paintings or the museum?
Oh, is this a question for you, Charlie, as the artist, or me as somebody who's borrowing a painting for a museum?
Maybe Barb can rephrase that. So we'll throw it up again. And meanwhile, I'll ask my final question, which is, so what's next for Sarah? And tell us what's happening. What's the future holding?
Well, right now, the future is holding all of the shows that are coming up in June, including your show. So those are things, we have a huge group show that's going to be opening on June 19th. And then we have Charlie's solo show, which is going to be fantastic. We have a smaller but also very wonderful group show. And then we have 2 individual solo shows by artists in smaller galleries. So we've got a bunch of stuff coming up, just in the sort of normal, museum exhibits realm. And then we have some exciting events that are going to be happening related to the exhibits that are on show now, which end on June 13th. So between now and June 13th, there will be a lot of online talks and I hope some in-person stuff. We're still trying to figure all of that out.
Right now, is the museum going to be open on a regular schedule throughout the summer? So
we are.
Come to Vermont, keep your distance.
Yes, wear a mask, but please come. Yeah, we're open Wednesdays through Sundays, 10 to 4, and it's pay as you wish. So if you wish, you can pay absolutely nothing and still come in and enjoy the shows. And the galleries, the museum it's actually a really good place to visit because there's plenty of room. It's not confined. You don't feel overcrowded or overwhelmed. I also really appreciate the scale of the museum. it's not, we're not talking about the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, where you have to spend at least, a full day to really see things. This is someplace you can come and you can take a look around and enjoy one or two of the exhibits if you want to see the whole thing, but it's not going to take you hours and hours and hours. It's really,
it's a tasting menu.
Yeah, exactly.
Smorgasbord.
Yeah.
Okay, so Barb's question, I believe I know the answer. Barb's question is basically, if she has a painting in a gallery show at a museum, and they sell the painting, the museum sells the painting, does she get the information about who bought it? I would assume absolutely. If you guys, you're not really in the business of selling paintings either.
That's right, we're not. So the museum does not sell paintings directly. What we would do in that instance is if somebody came in who was interested in buying one of Charlie's paintings, which I feel like is very, very probably likely to happen, we would direct them right to Charlie. So we just put that person right in touch with you. And that's what we usually do.
What I'm going to actually do this year is my gallery in Northampton, Massachusetts, Will Basic. Will is going to be the agent for the show. So if someone inquires about a painting, it'll go to Will and he'll handle it. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I think there are times when people who buy work from a gallery want to remain anonymous. That happens from time to time. I think it doesn't usually happen that they want to remain, they don't want to let the artist know who they are. They might not want to let other museums or other places know who they are, but usually the artist is often like the one person who knows, or the gallery who's selling the work, obviously.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.
It was really big fun, and it's been working with you so far, and I look forward to the remaining steps. So
I know. Well, we'll be in touch really soon.
All right. You take good care, and thank you everyone out there in internet land for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.